Today on the Zulu One podcast, I'm joined by Calvin Correli as we dive into family constellations, the unseen systems guiding our lives, the future of AI, and the need for healing, even for figures like Elon Musk. Together, we reflect on his work, his book, and the deeper connections between technology, humanity, and the state of our world. Let's get started. Calvin.
John.
How are you, sir?
I'm phenomenal.
I feel like I'm talking to a kindred spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of was doing a little background on you and saw this concept of spiritual entrepreneurship. And I was just, it very much resonated with me. I know that you're the CEO of a company. You've been doing this for a long time. You're familiar with family constellations. And so tell me a little bit about how you came across this work and how's it changed things over the last years.
So family constellations is quite new to me. It's only about a month ago that I discovered family constellations. And it's crazy to me. I had my first spiritual teacher that I worked with in 2007. I've done a lot of work. And somehow I've never come across family constellations before. And it blew my mind. I was with Tony Robbins and his group in Abu Dhabi last month, and Michelle Bleckner was there doing some workshops on this, and it blew my mind away. And so since coming home, I'm on book number 6, reading about family constellations. I've had several sessions, and it just blows my mind because it's like I've been doing all of this work kind of on myself, not recognizing that a bunch of this wasn't mine at all. Right? My mom had a stillborn son before my older brother. And like a lot of it is his or other people in the family. So yeah, it's been remarkable.
Yeah, that's I saw your book, and I saw your book and I saw Michelle holding your book, and I'm like, oh man, it would be really great to connect with Calvin. Michelle, I love her dearly. She's a dear friend, and I'm just impressed by the levels that she's been able to amplify this message of family constellations. And what happens a lot is like people are intuitively connected to this system, right? People that have been working on themselves. And it sounds like you started with that a long time ago. What was the first kind of iteration of getting into, dealing with your crap efforts?
The technical term, dealing with your crap.
Yeah, the technical, working on your shit is the technical term, right? But
I think so. It started 2003 was a really great year and a really sucky year for me. But I'm from Denmark. My girlfriend and I had moved to New York in 99 and then moved back to Denmark about a year before 2002. And I'd started my first company as an adult and it was going fantastic. I won this Startup of the Year award, and I did a conference where people came to Copenhagen from MIT in Boston and big institutions, Greenpeace International, Heidelberg University in Germany, all these places. And then I got married, and I was like riding this high, and I won this award of Startup of the Year, and I was like, yeah, it's crushing it. And then I invited some friends and smart people to an advisory board meeting. I just had them, it sounds fancy, just had them come over to my house. We sat for 3 hours and they advised me on my business. And then as we were wrapping up, one of them, Thomas, looked me straight in the eyes and he said, "Look, brother, we've been here for 3 hours. I still have no idea what you want." And it was like, what do you mean what I want? I just want to build a big business and be something, right? It's like, wait, that's it. What more could there be? And then I was like, wait, are you allowed to want something in business? Is that a thing? I didn't know. And then it was like, I have no clue what the hell I want.
Mm.
I just knew that I needed to reach a certain level of success in order to be not okay, in order to be like not worthless as a human being. And it really sparked this whole journey of like, I don't know what I want. How does one know what they want? I can't feel myself. How would I know what I want if I can't feel anything? And so got, a therapist, a psychotherapist, for a little bit, and discovered various like forms of body therapy and other kinds of therapies. And then 2007, so 4 years later, was when I got a spiritual teacher and started to take a coach education and become a coach myself, realizing, oh, I might actually have some skills in this department, which was very foreign to me. Like I remember when one of my coaches was like, you should become a coach. I should think you'd be a great coach. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not a people person. I'm a computer person. And yeah, then it's just been on and on from there.
So I know that you were, you come from the coder background.
Absolutely.
How have you seen that, through this healing work, that you start seeing the code in people and systems and in different dynamics?
Yes, it's a great question. I do actually. So coding software is all about language, syntax. And then if you wanted to do a certain thing, you have to do it the right things in the right order. Or if there's a bug, if there's a problem, you have to identify what exactly the thing is. And that there's a lot of both art and science to that. There's a lot of creativity to that. One of my first career paths was actually I wanted to be a jazz pianist. And,
oh, wow.
And then when I decided to drop that, there's this huge connection there, right? Math and logic, music, software, all of it. So, but when I dropped that, everybody was like, oh my God, Calvin's like, such a shame. You're so creative. Like, why do you want to do software instead of music? I'm like, software is every bit as creative as music. It really is. So, and our minds are also coded with language. Everything at the end of the day comes down to language, which is made out of words, which are made out of sounds, which are made out of vibrations. Like it's all the same shit, right?
Yeah.
We're PG-13 here. It's all the same shit. And so I one of the monikers I use for myself is a mind debugger. So I'll listen to what people say and their language using that same lens of like, oh, that word that you used right there is pointing to the trap that you've made for yourself.
Oh, geez. And how many times incredible people that we come across are masters of crafting the best traps for themselves, right?
Oh, yes.
We've all, yeah, right. It's like we all come across these incredible people that are very good at what they do, and then they're just self-sabotaging out of loyalties to their family system or whatever that looks like.
I've just finished, like a few weeks ago, listening to the biography of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
The big one by Walter Isaacson. Have you read that?
So I'm not sure if the same one. I read the first one that they did, the one that they talk about his great grandfather, his grandfather flying the first solo from South Africa to Australia with his wife, and I'm like, but continue. I want to hear your take on this. This is interesting.
Well, I mean, he's basically disowned his father at this point, and has this whole thing with his father where he's all the stories of his father like berating him as a kid and all that stuff, right? I'm just like, come on, Elon, let's do some family constellations on this thing.
Yeah.
When you're talking about someone who's really, really smart and then so freaking tormented, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's something that a lot of people who are very driven, whether it's artists or entrepreneurs or scientists, whatever, they have this like innate drive from pain, right? And they're so afraid that if I heal that pain, will I still have the drive to produce? Like, will I lose my edge? So like better not look at that shit. And I get it because like you might lose your drive, right? Or you might get a whole other gear. Now you get to create from love instead of from fear, from you're sharing of your creative generosity versus you're trying to like fix something that you think is broken.
Yeah. And the that driving force can go can go sideways very quickly, right? If that's the same person that has that drive towards, because their trauma circumstances or their trauma code points towards something that's constructive and innovation, the same thing can point towards destruction. And that you have this profound force of destroying yourself or destroying everything in your path, that it's based on the same kind of mechanism to just pointing at the wrong place, right?
Yes. Yeah. And you see that with Elon. Right? Yeah. Like he burns people out and he creates all kinds of problems for himself that he then needs to go fix, Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work out, but you don't have to do that.
And it's ineffective, right? And who am I to say that the guy that's worth, I don't know, $300 billion is on the wrong track? I mean, the proof is in the pudding, but so many people try to emulate that thing and fail throughout the process because they don't have the just secret ingredient of being able to do it. And it's in some capacity like unsustainable and extraordinarily inefficient. It's like if somebody that's so, efficiency driven, or I don't like the word efficiency. I like the word effective. It's like one shot, one kill, kind of, be as effective as possible. Like the way to become as effective as possible is through dealing with your trauma and becoming that flow state where you can create an incredible life, but also a credible abundance in all intertwined and going towards the purpose of making the world a better place. Right.
And again, at the end of the day, why are we doing all this?
Yeah, exactly.
We're doing it because we want to feel good. We want to feel something.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about Simplero and how your, kind of spiritual journey has influenced working as a CEO. Hi, I'm John from the Zulu One podcast. If you like what you're hearing and it resonates with you, please consider becoming a monthly supporter. The link is below. Thanks.
So the Simplero started because in 2008, I finally had a moment where I answered the question of what is it that I really want to do here? What is it I want for my life? And the answer that came to me was integrating spirituality and entrepreneurship. And that's been my North Star since 2008. And then, okay, great. How do I do that? What does that look like? Well, part of it is me working with clients, as a coach on doing that. And then as I got into that, I was like, okay, how do I get started with that? And online marketing. So I discovered online marketing and online courses and that whole world. And then I needed software for myself, for my own business. And so I started building Simplero. And then that grew over time. And so here we are 15 years later and the software is still around, I'm still doing the coaching and loving it. I actually stopped doing coaching for many years and got back into it a few years ago. And I love doing both and using my own software to run my own business. And so, Simplero is really that software that does everything that you need for your coaching or course or kind of creator business, like from websites and funnels and charging people money and delivering content to them and making sure people have access to what they need to have access and transcribing your videos and AI bots with like all of the things. Yeah. In one place.
Yeah. One of the things one of the phenomenons that happens in the family constellation world is that, they're terrible marketers, right? They have this incredible gift of being able to connect to the systemic field and, this knowing field. And they're just terrible at, branding and marketing and doing kind of like the day-to-day minutia kind of things, right? So it's very rare to see somebody that has the combination of the spirituality with the entrepreneurship, the structure to be able to do that. So when I started researching you, I was like, oh, this guy totally gets it. And, I wanted to, one of the reasons why I wanted to have that conversation is to say, it's like, we need more entrepreneurs that are spiritually guided, right? That have the ability to tap into that side of us, because it's a huge part of the equation that we're not considering, is that human potential aspect. How do you integrate, how do you integrate kind of the leadership into the spirituality, into the personal, when so many people try to keep that separate? How do you navigate that space?
I love what you said about the more spiritual entrepreneurs, because that was one of the insights as well. I can coach only so many people, but if I can create the platform and make the ecosystem that allows other people to do that work, we can reach many more people that way. And so that's part of the mission of Simplero as well, is just support all the teachers out there who are doing amazing work so they can reach more clients more effectively. They can share that gift that they have without burning out from all the minutiae of it, or from just poor business models or business strategies. So it's not, we do more than just the software. We also, like, as a member of Simplero, you get coaching and training on how to be a better coach and build your business better and all of that stuff as well.
Oh, wow. Jeez. I mean, yeah, that's a powerful tool for, especially for this community to be able to do that. It's like, if you're giving somebody the platform to do it, it amplifies that voice, because, you see these facilitators that, Michelle is a very rare case that the majority of the facilitators that I've known over all these years is that they're just like doing these small workshops in communities and that's kind of the thing, right? They're not getting the exposure that Michelle has gotten, which is incredible, that Tony and Sage have gotten, have put this together and showing it to people like you,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful that they did that. Yes.
Yeah.
And I was talking to her about it. She's like, how did you get on Tony's stage? And she's like, I have no idea. It just kind of happened. So
that story is incredible. That story, it's just like, it just was happenstance. And it was, when what they say about luck, when preparation meets opportunity, it's like, it just kind of clicked and it was supposed to happen.
To answer your question about leadership and spirituality, for me, I don't ever make anyone believe what I believe, right? And everybody has their own spirituality. Some people's spiritualities, there is no spirituality. One of my sayings is, spirituality done right is just reality. Like, we're living right now in a very narrow, limited scientific paradigm. But as that shifts, and all paradigms shift over time, as that shifts and we open the lens, we're going to see that science proves everything that, we know to be true spiritually. And the things that like, the things that are kind of hokey, like there's definitely in this realm of spirituality, there's stuff that's hokey, that's make-believe, that's fantasy. And I think that's going to fall away so that we can get to the things that are real. But right now we're just ignoring that from a scientific viewpoint, generally speaking. And I think that's bound to change in the next, I don't know, decade or two or something. Like, time is ripe for that change to happen.
That's a super interesting point. I'm curious to find out what your thoughts are. What's going to happen with this advent of AI and spirituality? How do you think those two worlds are going to converge?
I don't know. It's very interesting. Cause it's like, well, I mean, what is spirituality? One of the books that inspired me so much, like 15 years ago, it's a book called Extraordinary Knowing.
Okay.
And highly recommend it. Essentially, the story is she is a Stanford PhD psychologist. She has this experience where she loses an object. It's a harp, but her daughter plays the harp. She loses an object. This not random bag, but this guy who lives several thousand miles away, pre-internet, he gets a map of where she lives, and he's like, the harp is in this house. and it turns out it was. And he's like, how do you know? Like, that's, impossible given our traditional scientific understanding. And so she dedicated the rest of her life to studying this, created a group of 60 other scientists, well-renowned people, to study paranormal phenomena and try to get at a science of those phenomena. And one of the conclusions that I drew from it is that everything exists on a continuum from 100% certainty to 100% uncertainty. And there's this continuum that we can live within. And the moment we insist on 100% certainty, we collapse the field of potentiality. And we live in a fixed dead 3D world. Yeah. And so if you apply science in a way that it has to be certain, then you exclude everything that's not that, which is the vast majority of life.
Yeah.
And so we have to address it, like the spiritual world, which is also what we get access to through our subconscious mind, operates in probabilities. And so we have to operate at that realm to be open to those things. So I think that's the direction that I see science eventually moving in, because it's just inevitable that it has to. And and I think that's how we start to link things. Now, in terms of the question of AI, it's interesting because I'm reading a book right now, Thomas Campbell, called My Big Toe. I don't know if you've come across that one.
No, I haven't.
Toe as in theory of everything, but also like
okay.
My Big Toe. And I'm only a third of the way through, but essentially the argument he's making is like, what if we live inside, like it's essentially like we live inside of an illusion. And like you imagine the field of consciousness being an amorphous for our intents and purposes, infinite field, but it doesn't have to actually be infinite. But now you introduce a clock of some sort that just has a cycle and it clicks. And then the elements within this can change state. And essentially like now you have like, I'm like I said, I'm a third way in. So I'm not sure this is going to play out exactly. But what I'm starting to get is like, he's essentially describing how computers work.
Yeah.
There's a clock and it's binary and all of that. And so now like AI can model all of that. So the question is that conscious? I would, my inclination would be to say, well, there's something, it's called a soul. So something that's, life itself that these machines can never have. They tend to replicate more of the rational mind, not the full, being that we are. We're so much more than the rational mind. It's like, if the rational mind is like one tiny speck, all of this is who we are. And we pretend like we're tiny, we're that little speck. And then we compare ourselves against an AI who's much better at that stuff than we are in some respects. And we're like, oh my God, humans are nothing. And I think it's a very limited view of humanity.
Yeah, that's the, I've had, I'm in technology, right? I run a technology company, right? Cybersecurity technology company. And I see that there's so many similarities between technology as a manifestation of that subconscious in some way, right? It's like cloud computing is almost, the relationship of the workstation and the soul, right? And the cloud is the workstation's soul in some capacity. And you can push that experience to all of them at the same time. And, there was, Lex Friedman was talking about how these extraordinarily complex systems come out of these very simple rules, right? And that in some way, we are these large systems. And I think Constellations taps into that systemic intelligence in a very repeatable, measurable, trainable way that you can say out of this ether or whatever, morphogenetic resonance, what David Bohm like David Bohm's theories of patterns and waves. Like we're starting to approach where I think the AI in some capacity will start seeing the forest for the trees. They'll start taking away the stuff that doesn't make sense. And there's going to be like, this is all true because it repeats in every single pattern, right? That there's like we're starting to get into the objective truth. And what I think is like, it's true because it happens often and happens all the time. That the fact itself that it's observable is because it's why it's true. And I see that in like the advent of AI in some capacity is going to start seeing where everything, the Venn diagram covers over everything and where the truth lies because it presents itself in every single system.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm fully following here. What is it that presents itself in every single system?
So, when you start seeing, when you start seeing these profound truths that they represent and they like follow what? These patterns, right? So there's patterns that happen in family systems, right? Like the excluded one gets if somebody's excluded, all the energy in the system goes to the excluded one. Like that's a pattern because it happens in every single system. If there's a child that wasn't recognized in the family system, so it talks about there's almost an intrinsic math or a physics to these probabilistic theories that happen in systems. And my thought is that these same things happen in every system. And so when, large data models powered by AI will be like, this happens in this probabilistic fashion over and over and over and over again. So it means intrinsically it's true. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess so. It happens over and over again, and therefore it's true. I'm thinking about that. Reminds me of what Rupert Sheldrake talks about with like habits of nature versus laws of nature. Is it a habit or is it a law? We don't really know, but we see it happen and again, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they solidify. And I'm a huge fan of Sheldrake. I know in the scientific community, he's a bit of a flying outside of the bounds, but I think that
he's shaking the paradigm, right?
He's shaking the paradigm. Exactly. I've had the privilege of interviewing his wife, and I'm just like, I'm such a fan of this morphogenetic resonance of these fields that, Bert Hellinger and Rupert Sheldrake were friends because,
I didn't know.
Yeah, they were friends because morphogenetic fields explain the phenomena that happens in the family constellations.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing, right? So when you tap in to these, and whether in person or over Zoom, you tap into some family member or some energy, and like all of a sudden, like I'm just bawling my eyes out, right? I'm crying my eyes out. And it's like, what is that? And will AI ever do that? Will AI have like birth trauma or
I don't know. That's a great question. But I think we're finding out that there is, like, the lack of evidence will be the evidence in some capacity, that the fact that AI cannot connect to the morphogenetic field is the fact that you're like, oh, well, we'll never become sentient because it will just be an amplification of unless it creates a like parasitic relationship where we are its connection to the morphogenetic field. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Or maybe like literally, I mean, some people like Yuval Harari, I forgot his name. Harari, you know what I'm talking about? Like
Johan Harari?
Yeah, I think, is that his name?
I'm not sure.
I think one of those guys that are like, oh, it's all just an algorithm. Like, I'm an algorithm, my dog's an algorithm, it's all just algorithms. I'm like, where? Like, no, like soul, heart, there's something more, right? But he might be right that when AI gets sophisticated enough, like that's indistinguishable for soul. I don't know. We'll find. I don't think so, but
yeah,
we don't know.
That's going to be a great. That is the question, right? It's like, where does consciousness come from? And I think we're inching closer and closer with these phenomenological processes to be like, hey, man, there's something that happens when you tap into this field where people, it's time is not a factor, distance is not a factor. There's some non-locality properties to it, because you can be on a Zoom in a constellation and somebody can be in Australia having an immediate reaction to the words that are being said when, there's vast distances between the people, and you've never met this person, and they're saying something that your grandmother would have said, and it's a perfect representation of the trauma dynamics in your family system. It's like, I don't know, man, but there's something here that is extraordinarily spooky, right? Yeah. I love that you have this, kind of engineering mind, and you're looking at this from kind of a very similar perspective that where I'm at, right? It's like, I was a aircraft mechanic in the military. So I was like, I'm very systems oriented. I'm like, okay, trying to understand systems. And then I fell into this work, and I'm like, oh, there's some probabilistic, maybe physics in this thing where you can start seeing like, okay, so if we can figure this out, you can figure out like unresolved trauma loads in systems and in cultures and in a family. It's like, do you have a unresolved trauma index of a 10 versus a 2? And what does that look like for the success of the organization or the success of the family that's not held back by these patterns that keep them in a ineffective loop?
Yeah, exactly. And that to me, like the leadership and spirituality, I think the core of it is what some people call the law of the lid. For me, is simply like the more that I become the lid on my organization as the leader.
Yes.
Yeah. And the more that I evolve myself and I clear these energetic entanglements or whatever it is that I do, the more I'm going to be effective as a leader. And then like the team is going to very quickly resonate with that. Like like my shifts are going to instantly cause some shifts on an energetic level in the organization. Some people might, select themselves out. Other people are going to be drawn more in, right? There's definitely the whole systemic piece of the organization as well that you can work with. But even without that, just you as a leader doing that work, like makes a huge difference. When I realized, one of the things I discovered fairly early on, like 15, 16 years ago, was that I was born strangled in my own umbilical cord. So starting with a near-death experience and then put in an incubator for 2 weeks, which is a break in bond with mom.
Yeah.
And I just learned, actually, it's crazy, on the trip to Abu Dhabi, where I was to meet Michelle, I called my mom and then she said, remember a while back you asked me whether I wanted you, And I was like, actually, I don't remember that, but tell me more. And she's like, yeah, I wasn't telling you the truth. The truth is that I didn't want you. I felt like you were coming too close to your brother. Your brother was just 9 months old, and I just found out I was pregnant again, and it was too close. And so I was thinking about having an abortion, but then I talked to my sister, and she said, no, you're crazy. You don't know if you'll be able to get pregnant again. You got to have this baby. And she did. And she's obviously happy that she did. And I'm happy that I did. And it wasn't like, but it wasn't like a big deal in that way. But there's that imprint in me that came to me in, like, at some point I was like, why do I have that? And before that, well, and then it's funny that she didn't want me and then I come out practically dead. It's like, all right, got the message, Mom.
Yeah.
And then 15 years before that, I was at a workshop where they did this anger release exercise, which was freaking phenomenal. I loved it. It was like rile us up for 10 minutes, dynamic breathing stuff, and then like, all right, unleash. And then all this stuff came out of me that I like, this whole new voice that I didn't know that I had. It was so powerful, so profound. And then after the whole thing kind of settled down, I got this vision in front of my eyes of a birth scene, and everybody was panicking and something was wrong. And so I asked my mom what happened at my birth. And that's when she told me I was strangled in my umbilical cord. And I was like, oh crap, that makes sense.
What incredible insight.
Yeah. Yeah.
What incredible insight.
And then I worked with a former Navy SEAL who turned coach, organization, whatever. But one of his core things was identifying your core trauma. There's like one trauma that precedes all the others and that kind of shapes the way that your brain looks at the world, because it's like, great, I did something, it worked, we survived. Now let's look out for other similar situations so I can apply that same strategy. And, it worked because you're still alive, but it might not be that helpful anymore. And so for me, what he identified was that core trauma. Now, the funny thing is that he had the same trauma himself. He had the same birth trauma. And so what he told me was that he realized that it's a near-death experience. And so you start life, and I had to have no memory of this, but you start life with, the tunnel and the light and the other side. And do you want to go there? And then you're like, I don't know. I was like, do you want to go back in here? It's like wet and cold and damn, or do I stay there? And so it tends to create the split inside where you're kind of half there, half not there. And I was like, once he said that, I was like, holy shit, that's my entire life. In relationships, leaving my family, my ex-wife and my kids, and we talked about business. As an entrepreneur, as a CEO, I was constantly looking, can I hire someone else to be the CEO? Can I hire a COO or a president or something? Like I don't know if I want to be the, like, I was always half in, half out. And so having that awareness, that's what I'm doing, just allowed me to make that decision and be like, no, I'm going to be all in here.
Oh, wow. I mean, talk about, one pattern manifesting in all aspects of life. Like just what a gift to be able to deal with that. And, to be able to identify that core trauma. And that's the thing that holds us back from potential, right? That to becoming the best version of ourselves, to fully stepping into our power.
Yeah.
You know,
and seeing that there's nothing, like everything happened perfectly. And now having the awareness of what it was, what those patterns were, I get to have choice in what I do with it and how I lead my life. I don't need to be trapped in that anymore. And it made me the person that I am today. I wouldn't be the person I am had I not had all these experiences.
Wow. Jeez. So what made you want to, kind of amplify this? Because this could be something that you could easily keep to yourself and be like, hey, I don't want to, this is kind of my process, and be very private about it. What in your life kind of said, hey, I'm going to amplify this voice to say, I need to do this, to talk about this to as many people as possible? Hi, I'm John. Zulu One is more than just a podcast. It's a mission to bring healing to families and communities. By becoming a supporter on Buzzsprout, you make this mission possible. Click the link in the description and join us. And thank you so much for being here.
When I realized that my life is about integrating spirituality and entrepreneurship, a big part of that is to be that role model, do that myself, and share my journey and my experience. And so I've shared everything that I've done. I'm sharing generously of everything I've done on my journey to get to where I am. And I'll continue to do that. And so when I discovered Family Constellations, and like I said, it's just blew my mind, and I'm like obsessed with it now. I'm like, hell yeah. Like I would love for everybody to know about this, because it's such a powerful tool. It's like I've spent ages working on, like one of my core patterns have been feeling worthless, feeling like I'm so worthless that I shouldn't even take up space, because that is me taking space from other people. I'm so worthless, I shouldn't be breathing the air because I'm breathing other people's air. And I need to, like, initially I was like, I need to be a Bill Gates, Steve Jobs level multi-billionaire success by 30, or I should just go kill myself and not exist. Like, that was the programming. And like, where the hell does that come from? And so I've done a lot of work on that over the years. But then with Family Constellations, I'm like, what if it's not freaking mine? What if it's just because my older brother was dead and I was like, oh, because you died, I shouldn't live, And like, as I've been connecting with him and taking him in, I get so emotional. I'm like, I'm so grateful that I have that older brother, even if he's not alive. Like when I think about the older brother that I do have that's alive, like the way that I know he loves me so deeply. He always has my back when I was in school and was bullied, and it was unsafe for me to go anywhere because I would get beat up. And like, I knew that if he was there, if I called on him, he would always have my back. And it's such a profound love that you can have with your siblings, and just knowing that there's another soul there, even if he's not in a physical body, he's still my brother. He's still my sibling.
Oh, that's so powerful. So in the birth order, have you done the work of your birth, where you are in the birth order as well, or in the pregnancy order?
So my maybe you tell me. So I have a older sister from my father's first marriage.
Okay.
So she's number 1, yeah, and then the stillborn would be number 2, and my brother would be number 3, and I'm number 4. Yeah,
that's just falling into your position in the family and knowing where you are in that order is just like, it's so tender and such a beautiful part of, because we have the stories like, oh, I'm the first one, or I'm the second one, or I'm the third one, or whatever that is. And we carry those things out of loyalty to the ones that didn't make it, right? That weren't born, that weren't able to, and just honoring their position in the family is just such a a tender thing to be able to process. And it's so empowering, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to see my parents. My dad's 89th birthday is coming up next month. I'm going to go there to see him over in Denmark. And the day after, I'm going to sit down with my parents and interview them on camera with just get all the stories of the family that they have. So I have that documented for me and for my kids, you know, to just know what actually did happen. You don't need to know, right? But it helps to know.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. It fills in the blanks of a lot of stories, especially for kids, you know, to be able to do that and create the context of what that is. So tell me a little bit of how many kids do you have, and how has this affected, you know, your relationship with your kids?
I have 2 kids, a boy that's 17 and a daughter that's 19. Okay. And well, it's affected me profoundly. So I'm divorced from their mother. She lives in Denmark and they live in Denmark with their mom. I live in New York City. And so they were 3 and 6 when we split, when we broke up. And so I haven't been living with them that whole time. And the relationship with their mother has been fraught. And so I haven't seen them since April. We're now in November. So, there's some communication, but very little. And so, but what happened with Family Constellations for me was it took it into my heart in a whole other way than anything else. So specifically with Michelle, she did this breakout session where some other guy was up on stage talking. He was the client, as they call it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about his older half brother who he wanted to have a relationship with, but his brother had this resentment towards him because he felt like he had taken his dad away from him. Mm-hmm. And so I volunteered to come up there and represent someone. I'm thinking I'm going to be representing the dad, but instead I end up representing the brother. As I was standing there, all of a sudden I started crying and I got so touched, and I realized this is how my son feels. It's not that I have another child, but something took whether it's my wife or the country or whatever it was, but something took his father away from him, and he feels betrayed and let down. And I was like, I get it, son. I'm so sorry. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. And the same with my daughter, of course, but I was specifically playing the brother, so I was really connecting with my son there. And I was just like, oh God. And a couple months ago, we had a thing where he said, "You're not my dad." And it was the first time he'd said that. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it really shocked me. And I'm not proud of how I responded, but I was like, I started arguing with him. Like, I'm your fucking dad. And like, anyone who tells you otherwise is, you know, not right. And all of that, which I know is not helpful, but I got emotional. I got triggered. And now I'm like, you know, I feel you, I feel you in a whole other way. And then when I think about my ex-wife, I know her story. I know her family story. And it breaks my heart, the pain that she's been through over the breakup. I was the one that left, and it was her biggest fear. And I get it. And for me, my father, I said, I have a half sister. My father divorced, my brother divorced, so both my brother and I have been very loyal to our dads, or our dad. And just seeing, it's so humbling to see how this plays out, and it's not personal.
Yeah. It's just not personal.
It's just these patterns we're playing, these energies we're stuck in until we change it.
Yeah. And what a gift now that, you have the tools to do it differently, right? That now you can say like, oh, yeah, now we can create this now through work. And, it's obvious that you're extraordinarily committed to this healing and self-growth. Is like, now you have this power and the language to be able to reconcile and break those patterns, right? For them, right? That they can say, I no longer have to be loyal to my dad and my grandfather and that generational trauma, and I can step into life fully without carrying the burdens that came from our legacy.
Yeah.
And that's, as parents, that's the main goal, right? Is to say, hey, you can make your decisions and screw up your life however you want to do it, but it won't be my stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. And for me, the exercise too of picturing, as we did in the meditation at the beginning, my father behind me, my mother, all my ancestors, and that, like, imagining a string connecting my heart to their hearts and then to my children's hearts, and just knowing that string of love is intact no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, that love is there. It's always available to me from my ancestors. It's always available to them, to my children, from me and from their mother. And really, recognizing the love that both of us feel for our kids, and seeing what amazing things, like focusing also with my ex-wife on the amazing love that we had together and all the beautiful experiences that we shared, and the pain that things didn't work out the way we'd both wished that they would. And that was how that was. But we can still cherish and love everything that we had, and the kids that we made, who are beautiful, amazing children, It's just the whole inside of me, everything shifted from this. And on the outside world, I know in my heart that kind of shift won't happen inside of me without it impacting them. The kind of the quote unquote evidence is not there in the 3D world at this point, but it will happen. And if it don't, it's all fine,
Yeah, it's, they say in the constellation world is that movements happen between 6 months and up to 2 years after a constellation happens, right? It's like, and what ends up happening is, like, there's this dissolution of old patterns. Like they just stop being there, right? Like, in the tech world, you don't know if you really fix something. It's the absence of the problem that makes you, find out that you actually fixed it, right? They're like, well, that worked, right? You did something and you made like 4 to 5 changes, and one of the things was the thing that actually fixed it. Right. So, this family constellation work is a lot like that you're like, oh, okay, so something I did, the problem's not happening anymore. So we obviously fixed it in one way. Yeah. And it's just such an incredible gift, and it's such an incredible gift that you can give your kids, is to work on your own shit, right? It's like, the more you work on your shit, the bigger the gift is for your children. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the book. I'm just very intrigued about the book that you wrote. It's I love the division of, we can do this. I'm very intrigued about this book.
Yeah. Well, so it's about politics.
Okay.
Mainly U.S., but also it applies to most of the Western world, and it's like it's applying this spiritual lens, if you will, to politics. So it's both the spiritual lens and also the logic lens, right? So it's left brain, right brain, and it's looking at I wrote it leading up to the election, so I didn't know which way the election was going to go at that time. But it essentially explains the moment that we're in, and explains what happened during the election. So no matter which side you're on, it's like if you're a Democrat supporter, Kamala supporter, whatever, it will explain why your crazy uncle loves Trump, right?
Yeah.
If you're a Trump supporter, it'll explain, why people hate you. I think people kind of know that if they're Trump supporters, they kind of have a sense of, but it'll give it's like a 30-year plan for how do we change things. And the vision is like much smaller, much more efficient government, essentially. Like, but what politics is downstream from culture. So what cultural shifts need to happen in order to make that a reality? So right now Trump won, and I'm super excited about that. I love what Elon and Vivek are up to on RFK, and looking at it from outside, it's crazy what's been happening for so many years. But essentially, so one of the realizations I was always, and I think this is the experience of a lot of people, I was always Democrat in my mind, like I was a tech bro, like that's what tech bros do. They're Democrats.
Yeah.
Lived in New York City, all the things, right? And then as Trump got elected, I recognized that like he broke late night comedy.
Yeah.
Late night comedy stopped being funny, and they contorted themselves into all these pretzels in order to make him look stupid when he said something that was actually quite reasonable. And I was like, that was kind of my wake up call to like, wait, what the hell is going on? And that went to this like deep dive. Just like now I'm like on book 6 with Family Constellations. I probably read over 100 books about politics and started to get really, really deep on that and understand what actually works. And many of the I was like, I loved Bernie back in 2016. And then like after I started deep diving, I started to listen to what he actually said and his policies and ideas and think them through. I'm like, no, wait, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
But I guess, the words are only 7% of communication. So we get excited about the tone and all the hoopla around it without actually thinking about what's actually being said. But the bottom line is that, I mean, it's a whole book, but the bottom line is that I think the vast majority of people, if you look at a high enough level, we want the same things. We want for people to be happy, healthy, prosperous, and safe. We want a thriving economy and we want a sustainable, healthy planet. I think we can all agree on those outcomes. Now, the question is, how do we get there? What are the strategies? And so when you break it down, like happy, well, that's really an inside job. It's not something the government can do. The government can get out of the way of stop making you miserable, but it can't make you happy. You can't make you miserable either, but it can stop doing stupid shit. But happiness is an inside job. Health is mostly an inside job. There's environmental factors. There's like RFK's famously talking about the fluoride that they put in the water here, things like that. But, and there's definitely a lot of systemic factors, right? Like feeding people crap that makes them sick and all that stuff. At the end of the day, though, health is a personal responsibility too. We can stop poisoning people, but at the end of the day, health is going to be personal. And then, prosperity. Also, same thing, right? We can stop doing things that impoverish people, like stealing their money and blowing them up in the Middle East and what else the government has been doing, other things that the government has been doing. Let's just leave it at that for now.
Yeah.
But you don't make someone prosperous by giving a poor person money, because the reason that the poor person is poor is generally mindset. So just giving someone who has a poverty mindset more money is not going to make that person more rich. It's going to make them, poor now with a big flat screen TV or something, whatever it is, right? So I'm all for helping people not be poor, but what are actually effective ways to enable prosperity? And safety, there's borders, there's police, there's fire departments, that kind of stuff. Again, there's a big piece that's emotional safety, which is an inside job. Thriving economy is essentially like let people like set guardrails, let people keep their money and invest them how they want to invest them. And sustainable planet is about just being logic and rational about what are the things we can do and can't do, and what's a good investment of resources into fixing whatever issues there are, but looking at it, clearly without like this doomsday blah blah that's been going on. Yeah, that's
the it all kind of leads. It kind of in my world is like all roads lead to Rome, but all roads lead to unresolved trauma. It's kind of I'm a one trick pony in some way. It's like it's like health, unresolved trauma, finance, unresolved trauma. And you start seeing how and I'm very curious. It's like how could we as a country name dealing with unresolved trauma as a national priority, right? It's like, how we did with smoking, or how we did with taking lead out of gasoline, or whatever that looks like. How do you get that voice? And that's partly my mission, is to say, okay, there's things that happen. Okay, let's say let's say Republicans are right. Let's say Democrats are right. Let's say they're right about portions of it. Let's say they're right about the victim perpetrator narrative. Sure. Okay, you're right. Everybody's a racist. Everybody's, sexist. Everybody. Okay, sure. Okay, yeah. Okay, yes. All those things. What are we going to do about it? Let's deal with our stuff, right? And the only thing that we can really do is each person deal with their own shit. And it's like it's such a it's the simplest thing, but also the hardest thing to do in the world is to be like, totally. Personal responsibility does have a massive factor in this, but let's create the narrative and the social structure where we're encouraging everybody to work on their stuff, to work on their unresolved trauma, because we want more winners, and we want the Democrats to be the crazy creative, types, and we want the conservatives to be the guys that make sure that the trains run on time. And the tension between those two things it's like where the prosperity of this incredible country comes from.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it's just such a, I'm so glad that you're looking at this, like what, looking at this from this perspective. So if you had, let's say, a magical,
I just want to jump on that because you're exactly right about everything you just said. And it's like, it blows my mind how we live in these narrow paradigms of, for example, healthcare, quote unquote, has nothing to do with health or care,
yeah.
but the healthcare industry and how it's insists on this whole 3D causality, framework paradigm. And then yet in every single clinical study, we're proving mind over matter in the form of the placebo effect. And nobody is even talking about that. Every single doctor, every single, medical professional knows that this is a thing and nobody's taking it seriously. So that's the next frontier that I would love to be part of. Right now, Elon, RFK, Trump, all these in there cleaning up the mess from a mostly 3D paradigm. I'm all for it. Now, next wave, let's bring the spiritual into actual government scientifically.
If not, we're just going to repeat it. It's like, okay, Trump, okay, so what's next after Trump? What's the next? We're just going to repeat the victim perpetrator narrative if we're continued to be entangled in that victim perpetrator narrative, right? It's you're the victim, you're the perpetrator, we're going to do this stuff. I want to be right above all else. It's and there's
much of what we want government to do is in response to our traumas, right? The whole pride thing is I feel unworthy because I'm gay or whatever it is. And so now I need the government and everybody else to reflect to me that I'm no, this is not how this works. Yeah. It's never going to fill up that void because that void is yours, or it might not be yours because it might be a family
exactly.
member, but it's your job to fill that up. It's not all our job, Byron Katie says, there's my business, there's your business, and there's God's business.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's what I'm encouraged about how trauma is starting to have this conversation to be I have this saying that's what happened to you is not your fault, but it's your responsibility to fix it because nobody else can. It's and you can't ask the government to do this stuff, but you can say, let's have a national conversation about this stuff to say, these are patterns. Let's start getting into the pattern breaking business to create more connection, more, depth to our existence so we can have more winners in general. Everybody, I want, people from the left, people from the right, people from the up, people from the down, the polka dots versus the stripes. I want everybody to be as prosperous as possible because we live in an abundant world. We live in a world of possibilities that if you assume personal responsibility, you assume the responsibility that you are the arbiter of your, that agency, that you're not absolving your responsibility to the collective, that we can create an incredible future.
Exactly. The golden age is within reach. It really is. And it's for me, the phrasing that I use is unlocking or unleashing the human creative life force. There's that energy that runs through us that, originates from our crotch, which is literally where life is created, right? And it fuels everything, but then all the unresolved trauma becomes these logs of bullshit that diminishes that flame. So peel those layers away that let that flame shine brightly.
Yeah, that's and to understand the force of loyalties. There's a book in the Constellation world that called it "Even If It Costs Me My Life." That loyalty is such a strong force that we will sacrifice our own lives in order to fulfill that loyalty in the family system.
Yeah. Wow.
And people don't understand that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and some of these incredible,
so innocent. It's so innocent doing it too. Yeah.
Yeah. And we like think of it as like we're being loyal to our unconscious family system, right? The stuff that we don't know. And it's fueled millions of deaths, right? Mm-hmm. That like when you start understanding that when this happens in cultural systems, it's like, oh, you know, the genocide and that happened during, you know, the Holocaust is fueled by the humiliation of the World War I, right? Mm-hmm. The catalyst of this, perpetrator movement comes from humiliation and the victimization, right? So he's like, oh, this is a really dangerous force. It can destabilize everything. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm afraid of kind of the current politics now. It's like, not afraid, because we're having this conversation, right? We live still in a free world where we can have a conversation about trauma and we can amplify that voice. But, you know, people that are like, I'm owed my pound of flesh through this righteousness that have absolved their agency to the collective will justify anything to be right, including genocide. He's like, this is really dangerous. You start seeing identitarianism on both sides, that like the spirit of perpetrator has infiltrated both of these sides. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that concerns me the most.
Yeah. But you're right. Like these things murder millions of people, and include, adding to that suicide and drug deaths and all of that stuff too. Right. Yeah. It's costing a lot of lives.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I'm very optimistic, because I see, it's like over the years, we just keep having this conversation and things get gradually better and better and better and better. And it's like, not this exponential thing, but just like over many iterations, the system cleans up the trauma. I think it's kind of like this feature of our systems, that it cleans up the trauma, maybe through religion, kung fu, meditation, whatever the thing that you do is, right? Whatever the things but it gradually starts like taking away those trauma entanglements. And I think family constellations is just this way of like supercharging that possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so beautiful because it's so simple and so clean and so effective.
It's elegant.
Yeah.
It's so elegant.
And it's so honest. Like the honor. I had for many years, I was like, mom and dad didn't see me or love me the right way. Like, all that stuff. And it took me like into my 40s, early 40s, until I finally kind of healed that. And it was a dramatic shift for me, and it completely changed my relationship, especially with my dad. But this is just taking it to a whole nother level, where I'm like really shedding any resistance to receiving their love and any need to make myself better than them in any way. Just I'm the little one. They're the big ones. They gave me life, honor and respect everyone that went before me. It like, for me, the word that comes to mind is reverence.
Yeah.
Fill me with reverence.
Yeah. What are
the I was looking at, I know my parents, I know my grandparents to some extent. My mom's father died when I was 1, so I didn't meet him, but like I know, but their parents, I don't really know. I don't know their names. I don't know their faces. And it's so humbling too, to realize that my kids are going to know who I am. Obviously, their kids are probably going to know who I am, but their kids might have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
It's a whole life. It's like humbling.
Yeah. Yeah. So what commonalities have you found amongst the 6 books that you've done this deep dive into family constellations? What are the common patterns that you've recognized amongst all of them? I mean,
in terms of its pattern recognition, so they're like noticing the patterns and how that shows up. I think that the thing that's been so powerful for me is those simple sentences that you say, like, I'm sorry things didn't work out between us because I loved you very much.
And the care that it takes to say that thing, and what energy you have to be in to be able to really connect and resonate with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. So what do you see in the future of this work, now that you've done, kind of, you were introduced with this on Tony's side. What do you see this, where do you think this is going?
For me personally,
Yeah.
or in general?
No, for you, or you personally.
I think it's something that I'm deep diving into for my own growth right now. And sharing about with my clients and whatnot, because, obviously, like, I coach entrepreneurs mostly. And, like, I've experienced, right? Every business problem is really a personal or spiritual problem that shows up in business. And so if you have this kind of entanglement with someone, that's going to really cause issues in your business, or it's likely to. So when that comes up, I send people that way. I just did that this week, send one of my clients to get some family constellation work, because I think there's really something there. I think I might do some training to become a facilitator myself. I see myself as more that type of guide, as a coach, that guide that's done all the things, and then I can send you to different specialists, but I can see kind of the big picture. So I don't see myself being, doing. I run a software company. I want to start other companies. Like, I'm more of a multi entrepreneur myself. But it becomes a really core tool in my tool belt, essentially. Byron Katie is someone who's been really instrumental for me as well. I don't know if you're not familiar with her?
No.
She's incredible. So a bunch of books, but her thing is questioning your thoughts. She has 4 questions and a turnaround, but essentially every stress in your life is caused by you believing a false thought. So common one is, I was working with a client yesterday, and she was like, I should have more clients by now. I'm like, okay, I should have more clients by now. Is that true? Well, I feel like I should have more clients. Okay, can you absolutely know it's true? I guess I can't know. I don't have more clients, so I guess not. Okay, great. How do you feel when you believe the thought that I should have more clients than I do? Oh, I feel like, how do you feel in your body? How do you treat the clients that you do have? How do you treat your spouse? How do you treat, yourself? Like, okay. What if you couldn't think the thought that I should have more clients than I do? Oh, I'd feel good. I'd feel happy. I'd feel free. I'd feel calm, relaxed, maybe energized, whatever. Okay, great. So now there's this thought that is not true. And when you believe it, you feel stress. And when you don't, if you couldn't think it, you would feel good. Can you think of a good reason to hold on to that thought? No.
Yeah, right.
All right. So
loyalty to my own resolved trauma from my family system.
Right. So what's the opposite? I shouldn't have any more clients than I have. I have the exact right number of clients that I should have in this right moment. And so should is a big one, but it's essentially it's such a simple approach to spirituality in the terms of just removing one by one all of those thoughts that we tell ourselves that take us out of being in reality, in the present moment, which is Byron Katie calls God. Reality is God. God is reality. And when you fight reality, when you fight God, you lose, but only every time.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. Ain't that the truth? Yeah. I think that's a perfect, I think that's a perfect way to wrap this up. Every time we fight God, we lose. Yeah.
And Family Constellations does that so beautifully, because those sentences that you say are exactly speaking the truth plainly, no judgment, right?
Yeah.
There may be it's a pity things didn't work out. It's like there's no story there. It's just speaking the truth so clearly and powerfully. So reality, God, and reality are synonyms. And there's a lot more words we could add to that list. Truth, love are 2 of my favorite ones. And I really believe that. Yeah. I really believe that truth and God are the same thing. So when we speak a truth like that, as we do in Family Constellations, we're touching God.
Yeah, that happens in in constellations on a regular basis. I facilitate constellations, and it's like you're in the presence of the divine. Yeah. It's just like the truth is so profound, it's almost impossible to explain it. Yeah. It's like you're in the presence of something divine. It's so beautiful, so elegant, so profound. You're just like it's impossible to explain, and it's humbling.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Calvin, how do people get in contact with you? Where do people buy your book? I'd love to, have this conversation again, man, down in the future. I'd love to have you back. I think we're resonant people, so I want to amplify your voice as much as possible. So how do people get a hold of you?
Thank you so much, John. You're a beautiful soul. I really appreciate it. It's been a beautiful conversation. So the book, go to Amazon. It's on Amazon, Kindle and paperback. And we can do with this, Calvin Correli. My personal website is my name, Calvin Correli, C-O-R-R, 2 R's, 1 L, C-O-R-R-E-L-I. And then for the software, it's simplero.com.
All right. Awesome, man. Hopefully we'll have another conversation soon, man. I'd love to see, how this settles in your life and how you use this as an incredible tool. And I'm really excited to see what the future holds for you.
Thank you, man. I am too. And by the way, to engage with me, X and Instagram are the 2 platforms that I'm on. I'm just my name. So,
nice. All right. Thanks, Calvin. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to the Zulu One podcast. If you found value in today's podcast, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything to us. And thank you for being part of this journey.